everyone will be muted unless they're asked to speak. And then when you do get called to speak, if you unmute yourself and then go back on mute afterwards, you do need to remain on camera all the way through because unless you are having real difficulties with connection. And then if you are having real difficulties with connection, then you can switch off and switch on as needed. When you want to speak, if you can just raise the symbol of a hand for us, have any cause to leave the meeting, let us know that you're going to have something, then it will be a question as to whether you have heard all of this, because you can only if you heard the whole debate. We'll deal with voting by everybody in the chamber casting their vote, and then I'll ask you, Councillor Gibbs, to just speak your vote, because I think that's the easiest way, just in terms of gathering all of the information that we need. So that's everything in respect of the hybrid nature. Just to remind everybody else that the way the system works is when you want to indicate that you would like to speak, you just press the speak button on your console and you'll then enter into a list which the Mayor can see, and he can call you in order. Obviously, Councillor Gibbs, we'll try and make sure we notice whenever Councillor Gibbs indicates he wants to try and get him in the right order. And then when we call for a vote, we will just call for a vote now. It won't be in sequential order, but you need to make really sure that you press the button that you want to on the console. So the button on the left of those three buttons is in favour, the button on the right is against, and the one in the middle is if you wish to abstain. So I'll hand back to you, Mr. Mayor, to start the meeting.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Fernanda, croeso I cyfarfod, diolch I chi gyd am ddod. Good afternoon, welcome to today's full council meeting of Wednesday, 9th of November 2022. Agenda item number 1, apologies for absence. Democratic Services, have any apologies for absence been received? No. Agenda item number 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government and Finance Act 1992, related to Council Tax, the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and the Members' Code of Conduct. Are there any members who wish to make a declaration of interest for any of the agenda items being discussed today? Councillor Lee Davis.
Mr. Mayor, I conflict of interest item agenda 10 as I work for the Leisure Trust. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Nobody else indicating. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not on declaration of interest. Back on the last topic, though, I'm not sure where Councillor Lisa Mitten is, and she hasn't given apologies to anyone. So, and she's meant to be here tonight. She might be late. So,
I think traffic's quite busy, so she'll probably here shortly. Okay. Yes, is indicating. Okay. Agenda item number 3. To approve as accurate the minutes of previous meetings, which covers reports 3A to 3N, which are full council of 5th of October 2022, cabinet of 5th of October 2022, planning, regulatory and licensing meeting of 19th of October, licensing committee of 20th of October, rights of way 3rd of October, rights of way 19th of October, rights of way 25th of October, governance and order committee of 28th of September, governance and order committee of 24th of October, social services scrutiny committee of 4th of October, social services scrutiny committee of 18th of October, corporate support and resources scrutiny committee of 10th of October, regeneration and public protection scrutiny committee of 11th of October, and neighbourhood services countryside planning of 26th of September.
I'd like to move the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Leader and Councillor Geraint Thomas. Anyone to second? Councillor David Hughes.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor David Hughes. I'm going to pass over to the monitor. Any questions from members? Hand over to the monitoring officer.
Thank you. Could you all cast your votes, please, remembering which is the button that you wish to press? And then can I ask Councillor Gibbs, could you please unmute yourself and tell us whether you wish to vote for, against, or whether you wish to abstain?
For.
Thank you, Councillor Gibbs, and that's
Thank you, monitoring officer. Agenda item number 4, changes to council's flexi scheme. Cabinet Member for Governance and Resources, Councillor Andrew Barry, will be presenting and moving this report. Gary Thomas.
Andrew takes the next agenda item. Yeah, just a message for Lisa, and she's involved in an emergency outside the Civic Centre. So I don't know what's going on, but shortly.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. I pass over to Andrew.
Change to the council's flexi scheme. The pandemic brought about fundamental changes to working practices across the country. Home working has moved from a theory to day-to-day practice and into policy, namely the agile and home working. There's an amendment to that policy that this report addresses. At section 3, page 64 of your papers, you will see the description of the issues from where we are to trial smart survey, conclusions of which have resulted in this report. 2 additional policies will need to be amended: timekeeping and attendance policy, special leave policy. The issue, though, needs to be balanced between the staff being satisfied we as an authority are doing all we can to accommodate these new ways of working, the level of service provided public. The leader, Councillor Darren Roberts, Councillor Clive Jones and myself had a lengthy discussion last night in relation to this balance, and to that end I'll add a new recommendation to Mr. Mayor in support of the Labour group and acknowledging shared concerns of the Independent group, namely that the proposal will actually work, and we will only know that after a period of time has elapsed. Questions such as how do we assess levels of performance from today to, let's say, 12 months' time? Are the phones being answered at the same levels? Are queries dealt with in an equivalent and timely manner? We understand we and every other organisation and company are feeling our way through these new ways of working, but as members, we are here to represent our constituents, and they look to us to ensure that service provision is maintained. So a report in the next 12 months' time, the timing is open for debate, to ensure a comparable or improved service will now be included in the recommendations. At that juncture, Mr. Mayor, I've got Hannah Brown. We've got Hannah Brown here today from HR, just to make some comments to flesh out the report, if that's okay, and then I'll take the recommendations following Hannah.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. We first moved to an agile approach when the pandemic hit, and I think it became clear that as staff were working from home, the current core hours of staff having to work between 10 and 12 wasn't quite working in terms of being flexible for staff and for services. So, for example, there were some staff that were working longer hours, needing to start earlier, needing to finish earlier, and some of those flexibility weren't available. We piloted the removal of hours with agreement, and we ensured that we made regular contact with service managers to see how that was progressing. We did a questionnaire and a survey which is included. A few things that I'd like to highlight is even with the if it is approved this evening with the change of policy does not give all staff the right to work any hours that they feel. There are still some restrictions. So previously the core hours made sure that people worked at least 3 hours a day between 10 and 12 and 3. But we've ensured that staff have to work a minimum of 5 hours. But if they need to work less than their contracted hours, they do have to seek approval. Managers also have to ensure that if they want to approve any flexibility to the pattern of working hours, that they need to consult the needs of the service first. So, for example, if there were other staff members on annual leave or had other commitments, that service wasn't being managed, then that person would. So all changes have to be agreed by line manager. We have to ensure that we make note that not all services are able to adopt any flexibility. So we do have some services that have to have that structure. And if their opening hours are, for example, 8:30 till 5, then some staff don't have the option of having that flexibility. We do monitor staff's time from a HR perspective, and we do ensure that people clock in and clock out. And if there are any staff members that go into minus hours, then that is flagged with the line manager for the rest hours could. And all staff are managed through the staff's the council's performance process to focus on performance. So staff will be having regular one-to-ones and annual appraisals to ensure that their performance is good and feedback is given. We have consulted the unions on this throughout, and they have been supported to the change of policy. They are pleased that we're offering family-friendly policies. However, they also do agree, and GMB in particular has commented that it's great to see that the council is having a family-friendly policy. However, we have to ensure that we put the needs of our customers first. So thank you, Councillor Barry.
Recommendations then, Mr Mayor. The recommendations of section 2.1, changes to the flexi scheme be approved. 2.2, delegate authority be given to the head of human resources for any future amendments to the agile and homework policy in consultation with portfolio member be approved. Third, an additional one, which I'll make sure Democratic Services have at the end of the meeting. The report to be brought after 12 months to full council showing the appropriate statistical and anecdotal information in support of the introduction of this policy to service levels. I move, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Barry. Do we have a seconder? Is that Councillor Clive Jones seconding? No? Okay. Councillor Claire Jones?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Claire Jones. And we'll go on to questions. Councillor Brent Carter.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I got two quick questions, if that's okay. Hannah, you're talking about monitoring staff clocking in and clocking out. For me, being quite au fait with Teams and hybrid working, can you tell me how you can possibly manage that situation when people are working from home without physically checking how they're on Teams, if they're showing green or red? That's the first question.
Okay, so the council's clocking in procedure is that we have a self-service system, which if they're in a building, they can use a clock-in terminal. If they're working from home, then they're able to use clock-in to open up the HR21 system, which is our self-service, and they're able to clock in and clock out using that functionality. Some staff obviously do use Teams. And there is the option to see whether somebody's available or in. And I'm guessing that some staff members would, or some managers would do that. But I think in terms of knowing where staff are, that's down to the line manager and the individual to create and have some engagement strategies so that using things like their diaries to know where staff are present. But those reports can be given then for staff's clocking times. The manager also has access to their timesheets on that self-service system, so they can go in at any point. Staff members.
My last question, sorry, it does concern page 113 of the agenda tonight. And Paris, before you say we're not on, it has got a relevance to this report in terms of complaints have increased dramatically the last year, already across the service force. So can you tell me if going to a flexi system of 7 to 7 is going to make that worse or better? Have no effect.
I think
Thank you, Councillor. What we are looking to do is back to that customer service provision that we have a scheme of work looking at that. So we're going to be introducing mystery shopper scheme, which myself and the Deputy Chief Exec have piloted briefly. So we're putting a scheme in place with that. The customer complaints, obviously, with the move to agile working and the change of operation that we've had to go through and adapt to, has seen an increase of complaints. We acknowledge that, but we're working hard to ensure that the customer service provision is now end-to-end fulfillment, and we are trying to improve that. So hopefully those will come down. The agile working, we hope, will give better flexibilities to service provision. So we can look at, for example, if we are requiring staff to go out and about and visit establishments, for example, in terms of licensing, that flexibility actually aids service provision as well. So it's an imperfect system we've got at the moment. One size doesn't fit. We're trying to make something that one size fits all, which is difficult in some areas. But I'm quite clear, which I've said before, for performance management is down to the manager of the service. Now, we'll do everything we can to help the managers do that with the systems we put around the managers, but it's different for every service, as we previously discussed. But trying to implement solutions across the authority which checks the performance management, and obviously if we want to bring back reports, we can. I know we'll be looking at a 12-month report, but I'm hoping from a scrutiny perspective and with our performance management, our QPRs, we'll be able to demonstrate the service provision across the authority, and the flexible working policy that's in front of you tonight should aid our service provision, not hinder it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Brian Carter. Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a few questions. First one is, can Hannah tell us what the current up-to-date amount of staff that we've got? Is it somewhere between 1,200 and 1,300?
Yeah, it's approximately 1,300 corporate staff.
In the background papers and the corporate assessment, middle of that, it does say in there that 160 members of staff took part in the survey. Do you think that's a true reflection of what the feelings are and the views right across the staff that are affected? Because you mentioned percentages in here. Percentages to me don't make any difference, because it's the actual numbers that we're interested in.
I think in terms of the staff that completed the survey, as I mentioned, not all staff are able to adopt and use the policy. So there were a lot of staff members that, if it wasn't relevant, maybe didn't complete it. We also ensured that we spoke to managers and we went to our senior leadership team to ensure that they were speaking to staff to give us feedback. So we ensured that they felt that their service wasn't affected by the change in and it's some of the staff obviously within that 1,300 are working in frontline services, so it necessarily be relevant to them because they haven't been able to adopt that policy.
But clearly 160 staff out of 1,300 can't be a true reflection. Do you accept that?
I think we tried all avenues to try to get as much feedback as possible, and we ensured that we did speak to every service area. And yeah, I mean, there are going to be a proportion of staff in there that it wouldn't have been relevant for them.
Oh, I understand that. There's clearly quite a number of staff affected by this. In fact, it's probably that majority.
Yeah. And what, you know, we ensured that during that consultation period, that we spoke to unions to see if they were getting any feedback about whether it was positive or negative as well.
I have a question, and I'll read part of the HR report, background papers here, and I quote: "There must be clear and measurable outputs which are set and regularly reviewed between a line manager and employee." Can you explain to myself and all the other elected members exactly how that's going to be carried out? Because my experience is that this may vary from manager to manager. And also, could you enlighten us as to how much training managers will have to undertake these measurable outputs?
Okay, so we have the council's performance management process, which is called performance. We launched that 2 years ago. That ensures that the policy states that staff need to have regular one-to-ones, and that every year that they have to have an annual objective setting session with their manager. They have a mid-year review and they have a year-end review. So during those meetings, the line manager and staff member will discuss the requirements of the role and look to set clear objectives as to expectation. When we launched that procedure, we ensured that all line managers were offered training. So we I've also put into online performance as well. So they've had not only the way in which they can complete the documents online, but they've had the opportunity to undertake soft skill training as well, that they're able to set clear objectives and they understand how to give a monitor back. So we've done a lot of support for managers. When we went to agile working, obviously the way in which managers were managing is very different to managing a team face to face. We've been able to provide them with well. We've also got scheduled this month manager foundation induction program. We'll be talking to managers about the clear processes and procedures that they need to adhere when they're managing staff. And obviously that's changed and adapted over the last years, able to change and adapt our training.
So, and in your opinion, if we're going to carry out another survey over the next, well, within the next 12 months, you've got something very clear to compare with what's happening now, what the figures will come out at the end of that survey, once targets?
Yeah, so we will be able to monitor, you know, the completions of how many staff are undertaking one-to-ones, objective setting, mid-year end. We continue to monitor that on a regular basis. We continue to target areas if they haven't been done, and I work closely with the management team to be able to highlight any areas of concern and then address those as appropriate.
And it also states in the report that the core hours recommended, that's gone. Would you accept that there could be members of staff, I understand they can start work at 7 o'clock. Their core hours could be on a regular basis, 7 to 12?
Till 12 noon.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be able to do that unless they'd a line manager. So the removal of core hours of 10 till 12 and 2 to 3 has been replaced with a minimum of 5 hours a day. So their contractual hours will be 7.2 in the policy it states that they have to work a minimum of 5 hours if they want a flexible day. But they can't do that without line manager approval. So they wouldn't be able to work, as you said, sort of 7 till 12, and then clock off for the rest of the afternoon without manager approval. It'd be down to the manager that if there was a commitment that that staff member needed to have that afternoon off, then the manager would have to ensure that obviously the service could be covered by that person not. So my recommendation that is if it is approved, I will be giving more clear guidance to staff and managers that it's not a given, it's not something that they can automatically have a right to. It's something that is based on the service and the manager has to have. So we shouldn't have the opportunity where people are just doing any pattern of hours that they sort of see. What it does enable is that there are staff that maybe have a project that they are in high demand and need to work longer days, and maybe then they can have the flexibility in those hours back.
We are talking currently at the moment about 12 months, but you say that you could get all that information within a lesser period of time, which will show a clear picture.
Yeah, I mean, we can monitor that and come back with a report in 6 months. You know, I will continue to talk to service managers about any support they need in service. And I think, you know, when there have been occasions where managers have needed that support, perhaps they've been a little bit unclear as to what accept and not accept, they will always come to HR for that advice. But if you want regular report, then I'm happy to.
Just to stress a point that before we actually implemented the pilot phase, we stressed quite explicitly to the managers that a service provision comes first and that was to be maintained. So notwithstanding, we've got to look at our customer service and we continue to look at our customer service, but that was stressed that service availability is key in all this.
Can I just ask, are you amendment to the recommendation then, Councillor Jones?
Yeah, I did have a couple of councillors indicating that they wanted to ask questions, but their hands seem to have gone down. Councillor David Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anna, you said that staff need to speak to managers less hours. What happens if they want to work hours or if they need to?
Obviously, that will be based on the service needs. So they should be talking to the line manager. So there could be an occasion where the line manager will ask longer days. They needed to hit a deadline, and obviously the staff member then be able to do that. And as I mentioned, then with the flexible scheme, they would be able to then claim those hours back time.
And since this scheme has been introduced, I can't think of another word, has the overtime hours increased since this is?
Not that I'm aware of. So if staff members are on the flexi system, they wouldn't be entitled to overtime unless it was agreed by the head of service.
Or time back has having time back increased, either or?
Yeah, the flexi hours. I wouldn't know that completely off the top of my head. I mean, the flexi scheme has always been there. What we ensured in this particular change was that previously staff could go under their hours, so that if they were only in credit by 1 minute, they could take half day or a flexi. Change that with this policy. Sure that they have to be in full credit for either a half day or so. If they are working, you know, they can, if they've worked the hours, they can get that time back. Whereas in the previous policy, minus hours. So
I'd just like to thank you for your explanation of councillors' questions. It's explained things than what was in the report. I have any more concerns prior to listening to what you said, and thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Jones. Councillor Darren Roberts.
Mr Mayor. Mr Barry obviously mentioned in his open address that conversations took place yesterday at our and catch-up meeting, which were so I for one welcome the additional recommendation. You mentioned that 12 months could probably be brought to 6 months quite. Yeah. So the question that I've got there, Councillor Barry, rather than amendment to the recommendation, are you happy to change that to 6 months, Councillor Barry?
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said at the outset it was open for debate. So 6 months, if everybody's happy with that, we'll go 6 months.
And I'd like to echo Councillor Jones' comment. Answered a lot of concerns that were
Councillor Dan Roberts. Any other questions from members? We will go on to comments. Thanking you for the report.
Mr Mayor, I didn't want to put this in the form of a question. It's a comment I think needs to be made, and we've already discussed that in our leaders meeting yesterday evening. But there is concern from members about how staff are contactable during the daytime. And currently, yes, if somebody's on holidays, they usually, although not always, they put on the system, they're on leave and back a certain time. But if any of us needs to contact a member of staff, sometimes quite urgently, to get back to constituent, we don't always know if a member of staff is off sick, has gone into training, etc. And I think that clearly needs to be identified and made clear to all the staff. And I think that would be helpful to us and certainly the members of the public. So the members of the public are having difficulty in being able to get through and contact that member of staff. You know, the elected members are in, by the sound of it, the same boat. So that needs to be looked at. And I know Councillor Barry, we raised this yesterday, is making inquiries about that.
Yeah, if I just give members a brief update on that. So obviously these concerns, you know, have been raised and we've been looking at it. So ICT are just concluding a piece of work which looks at the entire phone system and making sure all contact addresses are available via the phone system and Microsoft. So that piece of work is soon to be concluded. It's about 70% the way through. Obviously, due to the fact that lots of staff members during COVID had to lift and shift to home. There are some redundant lines still within the system, and there's a process of cleansing happening there. But separately, obviously, from Democratic Service perspective, as we briefly spoke about before, we're looking at how do we provide a streamlined councillor support provision to make sure that your queries and inquiries can be answered and dealt with and triaged as efficiently as we can, and then passported back to the right officer or the right service to make your lives as easy as you can to represent the public. And obviously it's going to the right person, and if you know, if a certain person in a department is off, then we can find out the right person it can go to in the meantime. So that again, as soon as that's finished, we can update you on that. But we're trying to deal with as much as we can, as quickly as we can, and make sure the provision for members is right, and certainly for the public. The whole customer service end-to-end provision is a piece of work that's ongoing, and we're trying to improve that as well.
So Clive Jones and thank you, Executive Michelle Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to put on, I've got to be honest, in the 5 years I've been here, I have had nothing exceptional assist every officer. I've never had to wait for answer any of the questions or queries, and I've got to be honest, fantastic staff, and I just want to thank them because they've been fantastic to helped me so.
So Michelle Jones. Any other comments from members? Councillor Darren Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well-known comedian Nick Kay says that the future is garlic bread. Well, we all know garlic bread is not the future, but agile working obviously is. The fact that the local authority adapted so quickly during the pandemic, is testament to the, and we need to offer best support, mental well-being as well for our staff members. But we can't lose sight, and it has been raised several times here this evening by officers, that the service that we deliver to the public is best service that we deliver to the public. Paramount. So yeah, I look forward to the updates coming forward, and I sincerely hope that it is successful because I think more agile working would benefit a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Darren Roberts. Any other comments from members? Indicate Councillor Andrew Barry.
We're having some debate. I haven't made the recommendations after. Have I made the recommendation? Yeah, sorry, I did.
Seconded.
What's going on? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. So now we've cleared that up. Yeah, back to the issue of I think it's safe to say from the conversations tonight, what we've entered into, and we've been thrown down this road of agile working, is it just throws questions after questions, and I think it's quite clear we're just trying to answer those questions as we go along. And thanks for your clarity and yourself, Ellis, with those questions. I think the 6-month review, I look forward to seeing that. That doesn't preclude, obviously, as you mentioned, Ellis, scrutiny and QBRs. We can call them in at any time. Some great questions there, and you can see that our ultimate aim is to make sure that we've got the very best service for the public. So apologise for all the questions. We had a long discussion about it last night, and this has been a prolonged discussion, but I think you see the benefit of what we're talking about, and it's good to see that the perspective of the residents is being heard. So I just want to say that. So thanks for the answers and some excellent questions.
Councillor Andrew Barry. Can we put this to the vote then, please, Monitoring Officer?
Everybody can vote, please. Gibbs in a moment. Another debate, that's fine. Councillor Gibbs, could you unmute yourself and please tell me whether you want to vote for, against, or to abstain?
For.
Thank you, and that's carried.
Thank you, Monitoring Officer. Agenda item number 5. 2023 review of parliamentary constituencies, revised proposals. Consider report Chief Executive. The Cabinet Member for Governance and Resources, Councillor Andrew Barry, will be presenting a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure every member has read this with interest and reduction. The Boundaries Commission for Wales from 40 to 32 parliamentary constituencies. Obviously, the corresponding reduction in seats at Westminster. The requirement of the Act is that any proposals be completed 31st of July next year. The proposal is that we become Merthyr Tydfil and Upper Cynnon with its Welsh name equivalents. We would hold 74,805 electors, slightly above the electoral As members, we can see the map on page 74 of the papers. In the revised version, we lose Nelson from the south, that was previously in, and Pondstick Reservoir in the north of the proposed constituency. It's cut in half, as is the Brecon Mountain. I'm sure members will have their own observations in addition to these. There are currently 11 Tydfil wards. They remain, in addition of 8 additional RCT wards: Aberarman North, Aberarman South, Aberdare East, West and Lloycoed. 7,404 becoming the biggest ward in the proposed new area. Cumbach, Hirwain, Penawine and Ricos. The recommendations, Mr Mayor, at 2.1, the Local Government Boundary Commission for Wales revised proposals report for the 2023 review parliamentary constituencies in Wales be noted, and at 2.2, forwarding of submissions and comments be forwarded to the Democratic Services Department, collation and return to the Boundary Commission for Wales. And if I can just add there, by the 14th, I spoke to Anne earlier, the 14th of November, so next Monday. Needs a bit short notice, but we need to get them in by next Monday. Is that correct?
Yeah, the deadline for responses is 15th, so we can get them back to Democratic Services. We can collate them then.
Okay.
Well, if we can get them to us by the 14th, we can collate them. Send.
Okay, so if we add in there by the 14th of November and that be approved, Mr Mayor, and I move.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item? Councillor Michelle Jones.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Jones. And we'll go to questions, members. Questions? Okay. We go on to comments from members. Any comments? Councillor Scott Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to express my disappointment that the Cabinet member didn't actually commit to the Welsh language variant of that option as he did when this was brought to us previously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott Thomas. Councillor Clive Jones.
Mr Mayor, I'm going to respond certainly by next Monday, because my view is that now that they've altered and increased the number of wards on the Cynon Valley side, which encompasses practically what we all know as Aberdare, and I feel that we should be going back perhaps 120 years ago when this constituency seat was known as Merthyr Tydfil Aberdare. My own view is that I don't just think that Merthyr Tydfil Abercynon sounds quite right, frankly. So that's what I'll be sending in as a response. And as an aside, because it was mentioned by Councillor Barry quite rightly, the boundaries, the actual boundaries of certainly the top 2 wards needs to be looked at, because as has been mentioned, we've got I think it's the side of the Brecon Mountain Railway, part of that is in another ward and part of it is in Merthyr Tydfil. And similarly with Garrow Nant, I have never understood why Garrow Nant is within the Rhondda Cynon Taf County Borough Council, when it's clearly, in my view, and should be in the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough, but obviously the actual ward boundary needs to be looked at. And I would have thought, they called the Local Government Boundary Commission, that they can at least take note of what anybody's comments are made in that respect.
Thank you, Councillor Clive Jones. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and totally support Councillor Jones and his points raised. very interested to see what's said in the kind of tough meeting when they're debating this, because I feel, you know, it's Tidwell and Aberdare should be. I agree with the points made regarding when we go back, and I have spoken to Aberdare about this. Perhaps we should get a map drawn by Richard Bedford. We can out what we is the Merthyr boundary that should be here for the Merthyr Tydfil and Aberdare parliamentary elections, because for me, Becker Mountain Railway, and Garanant, half out and half Fechan valleys.
Thank you, Councillor Geraint-Thomas. Any other comments from members? Nobody's indicating. Let's to the vote then, please, monitoring officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If everybody could go ahead and vote, please. Thank you. And Councillor Kevin Gibbs, could you unmute yourself and let me know if you wish to vote against?
For.
Thank you. And that's.
Thank you, monitoring officer. Agenda item number 6, corporate self-assessment 2021-2022. Consider the chief executive. Cabinet member for governance and resources, Councillor Andrew Barry, will be presenting this report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a retrospective report on our corporate performance over the past financial and performance year. Previously, this was captured by the annual performance report. However, under new legislation, Local Government and Elections Act 2021, we are now presenting our first corporate self-assessment report, which, it has to be said, is a mammoth report because of its nature, but I'm sure will make it more manageable into the future as we progress. What will be a central pillar of our governance architecture. Both Martin Fields Governance and Audit Committee and Councillor Brent Carter's Corporate Support and Resource Scrutiny have had sight of the report. Section 3 of the report outlines the rationale and legislation that supports the self-assessment. The report covers 2 administrations, and this has been accounted for, taking us over the year, bringing us up to date at Section 5. Section 7 informs us what we need to do next. The actual 123-page report is at page 85 to 208 of your papers, not unusually a large document. There are a further 69 pages in supplementary papers on modern.gov, 28 case studies that members have had access to. Unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Corporate Self-Assessment himself, Andrew Mogford, with us tonight. You're to field any additional questions. But questions have been fielded in the scrutiny and audit committees. We do have the directors, should there be any questions tonight, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. If we can't, we'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. The recommendation is at 2.1, the Corporate Self-Assessment Report 21-22, approved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Do we have a seconder for this agenda item? Councillor Geraint-Thomas.
Second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Before we go to questions from members, I'm wondering, is it possible, this is a long report, as Councillor Andrew Barry has said, and it's gone before 2 scrutiny committees. I wonder, would it be possible to make is there any way that Democratic could make members aware that there are videos available from the 2 previous scrutiny committees, just so questions aren't duplicated every, might make it easier for members? Yes, okay. Okay, we'll go on to questions from members. Shot me down. Jumped the gun, I think. Right, nobody's indicating questions. If we go on to comments, any comments from members? Councillor Anna Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to see within the case studies linked to this report the inclusion of Nature's Gift Garden in Troyderoo Park. This is a welcome addition to an already much loved community park, and I'm pleased the Welsh Government funding was available through the local Nature Partnership Fund and Winter Wellbeing Funds. The challenge for biodiversity projects such as this, and also the Nearby Sauron project, is to ensure that a core group of volunteers are available to engage and ensure the long-term sustainability of these projects, and I hope to be able to support them in this goal. It's right that we celebrate these case studies and what has been done well. However, I also wish to highlight the risk identified within this report to my ward and the wider borough under the section on environmental wellbeing. Villages of Abercanid, Pentrabark and Troyderoo, which make up the Plymouth ward, are listed as being in the top 100 areas in Wales at risk of surface water flooding, with Troyderoo highlighted as being at further risk of flooding from rivers. Our communities have already seen a devastating impact of extreme weather, undoubtedly connected to climate change. Following Storm Dennis, there have been a number of improvements to flood defences, and I would like to give recognition to my ward colleagues, Councillor Brent Carter and Councillor Gareth Lewis, who advocated for improvements before I was elected. This is an area, though, where we cannot afford complacency, and I fully support the Council's aim of mitigating the risks of climate change, specifically flooding.
Thank you, Councillor Anna Williams-Price. Any other comments from members? Okay, nobody indicating, so can we put this to the vote? Barry.
Mr. Mayor, just recognition, Mr. Mayor, for the work, and I mentioned him earlier, Andrew Moffat, who's not well, he's not with us today, but he lives this stuff, and he's done a tremendous job for us in sort of making it partially understandable to us. So just thanks to him, what I want to record for saying.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Barry. Okay, can we put this to the vote then, please, Monitoring Officer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if everybody votes, please. Councillor Kevin Gibbs, you tell us whether you wish to vote for, against or abstain, please.
For.
Thank you, and that's carried, Mr.
Monitoring Officer.
You call for section 100. Yeah.
Right. Agenda item number 7 to deal with any urgent business or correspondence. I have none. Agenda item number 8 to receive communications from their worship the Mayor. I have had none. Before we go to agenda item number 9, if any officers are not involved in the next in agenda item number 10, they're and agenda item number 9. In order for the following to be considered in private, it's suggested that the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 14 under part 4, schedule 12A, section 100A4, 1972. I hand over to the monitoring officer to take us into section 100. Agenda item 10 can be discussed.